Maze Action is a third-person action-adventure shooter game that was developed by D3 Publisher for the PlayStation 2 in 2003, and this would be a budget entry title that would require players to pit against either AI opponents or against another player, and the goal is to explore a variety of different mazes or levels with the aim of getting to the end point in the quickest time before your opponent. And while you're playing, you have access to a multitude of different weapons and traps that you can use, but you also have a lot of challenges, hurdles and additional traps within the environments that you also have to avoid to stop yourself from losing health and to lose any weapons or any materials that you have. Plus you have to contend with another opponent trying to also take you out of the equation to steal all of your items from you so that they can try and get to the finish point before you do. This game would also fall under volume 8 of the Simple 2000 series that would have been seen in Japan also. So there's 4 different characters that you can choose from, and after defeating all of the characters on each of the levels, you will then have to face off against a final boss in order to complete the game. So even though the game has a simple kind of element to its nature, it does have somewhat of a story, but it's more of a competition. Now you can play in a free play mode that can allow you to get used to the gameplay style and mechanics, or you can opt to just play through the story mode. And pretty much the task is that you're just roaming around corridors within a maze type environment, looking for keys to open up other areas, avoiding traps like I mentioned, finding health kits, acquiring new weapons and anything that you can find while returning to the end zone before the other player does. So it's more of a competitive combat arena style game as such. And while it does have some unique elements, the gameplay does fall short in terms of what is presented, because again, this is a budget title. And yes, it is playable, but it's also very difficult to get used to because the controls are very clunky, and at times, from my own experience, can be somewhat, if at times, unresponsive, to a point that you're trying to hit a button to try and shoot a weapon and either nothing happens, or what happens is if you're shooting a gun and you're fighting off against an AI opponent, you cannot hit them with the weapon unless you're shooting them with like a rocket launcher or something like that, because if you're trying to shoot them like say with a handgun, they keep dodging the bullets. All they keep doing is crouching on the ground, so the bullets will always pass over their head and you cannot hit them no matter what you do, because they always anticipate every move you're going to make. As soon as you press the shoot button on the controller, they instantly duck or run to cover, so you can't actually hit them. So the aggressiveness of the AI is ramped up really high in this game, even on an easy difficulty. So at times it can make the game almost impossible for just a casual player to finish. And coupled with that, with the silly elements with regards to the unresponsiveness of the controls and the clunky nature of the controls, more to the point, can leave for a very lackluster and frustrating experience. But again, it is a budget title. It's never going to break new grounds. Like, it does have some ideas that could be considered decent, but it's not really all that playable, and it is considered to be a terrible game amongst critics, and that's the reason why it got such poor reviews. It's just, considering the amount of games that were being released on the PlayStation at that time, there was also a lot of questionable titles, especially budget entries and low quality offerings that were being presented at that time. And unfortunately, the majority of the catalogue of games on the PS2, at least a third of the games, are low quality budget entry titles, and a lot of them aren't really that good. They're playable to some degree, but they're never going to be considered as classics, which is a pity when you consider the powerhouse that is the PS2. This is just another one of those games that just falls way short of the mark in terms of what it represents. It really is tough. It just is pretty much unplayable for most regards, and in most cases the only people that would pick this up would be a collector. And in fairness, you can get this game like super cheap. Like, I remember getting a copy of the game in one of my local game stores. I found it on a bargain bin, on a bargain shelf for like 50 cents. So that'll be pretty much all that you'll need to pay for it as such, because that's all it's really worth at the end of the day. You'll be only using it to add to your collection. That would be the only real reason as to why you would want to buy the game in the first place. Now, I know myself, and I do say this, I hate to speak negatively of games, but you cannot deny some of the poor quality entries that were seen on the PS2, and this is right up there with those titles. It has some nice ideas, but it's not executed well at all, and you'll play it for a few minutes and you'll quickly get frustrated with it, because the controls are that clunky that it kind of reminds you of a lower quality PS1 game, which on the PS1 it can be understandable, because again, that was an early point in 3D games, so you'd kind of be hoping that by the time the PS2 came around that they would have evolved in terms of how gameplay mechanics were being implemented. But clearly with this game, it just wasn't done as well as it could have been. But it is what it is at the end of the day. It is a budget title. It is what you make of it. For those that have played it, I'm sure they might have got something out of it, but I know the majority of people would really avoid this one. But again, I would love to to know your thoughts on this if you have played it yourself, and if so, what did you think of this game overall, and did you probably find it as frustrating as most of us have, or have you avoided it altogether? So be sure to share it down in the comments below, and if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated with future videos. And if you would like to see more content on the channel with regards to other obscure and quite unknown games that would have been seen on the PS2, then you can check out the playlist on screen to see more of those games in action. And I will see you all in the next one.